Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today, guys, we will be doing a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review of Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is the first of these types of videos that I've done on the channel, so we're going to see how it goes. But before we get into it, we need to go over the answer to the last Comedy with Colin segment, where I asked you guys the joke, what do you call the wife of a hippie? The answer? Mississippi. Okay, with that out of the way, guys, let's get into this review. Now, the first part of this video will be non-spoiler. It'll just be a general overview of Project Hail Mary, and I will make sure to clearly let you guys know when I am going to be crossing over into spoiler territory. So with that being said, what is this book about? So we start this book by getting to know who our main character is. His name is Ryland Grace. And he essentially wakes up in a spaceship. He has no idea who he has no idea where he is, or why he's there. All he knows is he's been asleep for a very long time and he's millions of miles from Earth. He quickly finds out that he was part of a crew, and unfortunately that he is the last survivor of this crew. So as the beginning of this book progresses and Grace begins gaining more memories back, he realizes the mission his crew was on was more or less to solve a mystery, and the success of the crew would essentially determine whether or not Earth as we know it would survive. Great. No pressure, right? So this book is written using a present narrative and a past tense narrative, and we switch back and forth between these past and present tense storylines as a way to fill in Grace's memory and as a way to further the present day plot. I thought that this worked really well for this book. It was never jarring in a sense that it took me out of the story. If anything, it actually, in my opinion, kind of added to the intensity, because when we would switch away from a very tense present day situation to the past to fill in another blank, I was always like, what the heck? What's going on? I need to get back to the ship. So I think it worked really well in terms of letting us know and flesh out Grace a little bit better as a character and a lot of the other characters in this book. And it also allowed us to have a lot of anticipation and anxiety to get back to what was going on the ship. So I think Weir did a phenomenal job by using this. I've seen it done before where it didn't work too well for me, and it was jarring to the sense where it was kind of dragging me out of the story a little bit, but I didn't have that experience in Project Hail Mary at all. So you can expect some familiar sci-fi tropes in this, like humans exploring the depths of outer space, humankind and Earth under imminent threat, and a whole lot of weight placed on the shoulders of the few, or the one in this case. But I believe Andy Weir handles these tropes extremely well. There is a lot of science in this book. There's a ton that went right over my head, and there's some that I was able to keep up with at least the concepts of, if not the math. However, my understanding or lack thereof never took away from my enjoyment of this book. Andy Weir has a way of presenting these things in a way that doesn't leave the reader feeling left out because they don't have a degree in some kind of science. It was really fun to explore some of these concepts, and the math was there. I can't tell you if it was right or not, but a lot of it made sense. And I also learned some just like basic science stuff that I didn't know through reading this book. So I thought that that was fun. But I did want to mention there is a lot of science in this, but not knowing how it works does not detract from the enjoyment of this experience. There's a lot of tough themes explored throughout the course of Project Hail Mary. A looming theme of just how alone Grace is in outer space and how vast the whole of outer space is very present in this book. And that was just so crazy to think about, the vastness of outer space. I mean, we all know, but you know, just the way that Weir presents it truly makes you feel how alone our main character must have felt when he just woke up and realized where the heck he was. Mortality is certainly a theme that's explored throughout the entirety of this book in a variety of ways. You know, whether or not Grace is going to survive, whether or not Earth is going to survive is explored. And another theme is morality. So, Weir explores this in a lot of interesting ways because the lines between right and wrong get blurred pretty heavily when the existence of Earth as we know it is at stake. So, you know, as you can imagine, there's some decisions that can get made that might, you know, at face value seem like, why would you ever do that? This is clearly the wrong thing. But there's a lot of like good for the individual versus good for the greater good type of stuff going on in this book, and that was really thought-provoking stuff, and this is some great food for thought, like what would I do if I were in this situation, or if I was the one that actually had to be making these types of decisions that could affect an entire planet's worth of people. To kind of wrap up my spoiler-free thoughts, guys, if it wasn't obvious at this point, I really enjoyed this book. In fact, this was my favorite reading experience so far in 2023. Now, I'm not saying that Project Hail Mary was objectively the best book that I read all year, but it was my favorite reading experience. So I want to kind of make that distinction. There's certainly a couple things that, you know, if I was being nitpicky about, and I will discuss in the spoiler section because I can't really talk about it in a non-spoiler way. There were some things that I did have a little bit of an issue with, but overall, this was just my favorite reading experience. And I think one of the reasons why, and I really want to make sure to mention this, is that I did this one on audio. So if you have access to Audible, please do yourselves a favor and listen to this book on audio. Everybody told me to do this. I've had the physical copy for like over a year now, and I don't know why I've been putting it off, but if you have access to Audible, you've got to listen to this one on audio. There's something about the audio experience that I cannot talk about without going into spoilers, but it makes this audiobook experience so unique and so special. So you're just going to have to trust me if you have access to Audible and have a credit. It's worth spending on Project Hail Mary. I've listened to it twice now. I listened to it once by myself and wouldn't shut up about it, like I said in my wrap-up video. So my wife and I listened to it. She loved it. So Ray Porter is the guy that narrates this. He does an absolutely tremendous job. So I cannot recommend the audiobook version of this enough. That is going to do it for my spoiler-free thoughts. So we are about to head into spoiler territory. If you have not yet read Project Hail Mary, this is your time to get the heck out of here and come back later after you have listened to or read this book. And 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Guys, Rocky and Grace's relationship. It might be one of my favorite relationships that I've ever read in fiction. I mean, the way that they work together to understand each other's language, to understand each other's cultures. They spend so much time together that they get to know each other's idiosyncrasies, and it was just so much fun to watch this relationship develop over the course of this book. I swear, I wish I could have seen the smile on my face when I heard Rocky's voice the first time. I was walking in the woods with my camera, just like decompressing, taking some pictures, just enjoying this book. It completely blew me away. I was not expecting this at all. And the first time I heard Rocky's voice, I was like, no way. This is wild. So that was just so cool to see how they did that in the audiobook production. And, you know, it's pretty obvious that Rocky kind of steals the show. But more specifically, I really enjoyed Rocky and Grace together. I think, you know, and we get a lot of that in this book, that when they're together, I was dying laughing with tears in my eyes at some of the stuff that Rocky said. Like, I had tears in my eyes of sadness. Like, it just felt so, their relationship felt so real. And I know they are going to eventually make a movie out of this. And I cannot wait to see how they portray Grace's and Rocky's relationship on the screen. Now, I just want to kind of touch on a couple of things that rubbed me the wrong way, but are super nitpicky in the grand scheme of things. The first is that throughout the course of this whole book, we get Grace going, "I'm a scientist, darn it." and he documents everything. I mean, like, he's taking in-depth notes of stuff that he's discovering. He's got frame-by-frame cameras, you know, recording pictures of experiments that he's running on the ship, doing crazy math and documenting literally everything. Yet he never once thinks to send one of the Beatles home to A, let Earth know that he's alive and the rest of the crew isn't, and B, to let them know that he met a freaking alien life form. I mean, you've got 4 Beatles. They all have singularly the capacity, the fuel capacity, to get from the ship back to Earth. They designed them that way, that each one can get from the ship back to Earth for informational purposes. He's got 4 of them. They gave him 4 for backup. Why would he not think that is important information to send back home? And I know later on in the book, way later in the book, we need them as part of the plot, but we didn't know that for a lot of the book. I mean, he's just doing all of this experimentation and discovering, like, communicating with an alien, and he never thinks to send a Beatle home to tell them what's going on. Like, I don't know, that just, and this is after I put the book down and finished it, like that, I was just like, wow, that did not make any sense whatsoever. And the last thing that, you know, kind of was just irking me a little bit is, you know, this is a high school science teacher that they sent into outer space. He's extremely intelligent, don't get me wrong. I know that his level of intelligence is higher than that of a high school science teacher, and he has willingly chosen to be a high school science teacher. But knowledge is one thing, and being a trained astronaut is completely another thing. Now, we're talking about a situation where literal existence on Earth is at stake. And they're willing to send a guy who has had 0 astronaut training into space with this crew that has tons of experience. Yes, he's got knowledge about how gravity works, how space and things in space in the ship would be reacting to the different gravitational situations that he's in and the different atmospheres he'll be a part of. But knowing those things and being a trained astronaut to deal with them are completely different. So that was a little, I mean, in the course of the story, while I was listening to this, I was 100% willing to suspend my disbelief. These are just things that kind of came up afterwards that I'm like, yeah, you know, well, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But, you know, with that being said, it did not affect my overall experience with this book. This is just some stuff that I'm being nitpicky about after finishing. But, you know, like I said, all this stuff just kind of occurred to me in retrospect. That's going to do it for today's video, guys. If you've stuck around this long, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for sticking around. Now it is time for Comedy with Colin. Today's joke, guys, is going to be, why can't towels tell jokes? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. If you've read Project Hail Mary, tell me what you thought in the comments, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you're enjoying the content on the channel so far, please do consider subscribing, as that helps me out a ton. I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading, and remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.